Okay, so starting where we left off, you should have modeled one of these four types of surface. And what I'm going to do next is show you the kind of initial setup for RhinoCAM, which is the software we use for setting up files for the CNC router. So I'm going to go to my web browser and search software guidebook Kapla. You can also go to kapla.arizona.edu and search on the website for the software guidebook. Student software, and down here where it says School of Architecture Software Guidebook, click on that box link and it'll take you to the PDF. Load. So maybe I'll just go ahead and get started. If you should point out, you need to be on a lab computer, so you will have had to save your Rhino file and take it to a lab computer. I also want to point out we need to have this box just as a point of reference. You can have whichever one of these surfaces you want, but you want to make sure, and this is pretty important for RhinoCAM, that you don't have any other geometry in your file. So if you have, like, other iterations of things like geometry out here, it's going to mess up RhinoCAM's ability to see what it is it wants you to work on, or you want it to work on. So it's kind of important that we just keep our file clean here. And then if there's any stuff that you want to keep in the file, just put it on a layer you don't need for RhinoCAM. Just put it on another layer and turn it on. Go back to the beginning here. So under Contents, if you look under Modeling, there's a section called CNC Router RhinoCAM. Click on that. This is what I'm going to walk you through in this video. This is just the basic initial setup for any RhinoCAM file. So you can see the first thing we want to do is go to the RhinoCAM button at the top in Rhino. So you should have this if you're on a lab computer. And we're going to go down and select the button Mill. Now you may have also had these panels appear automatically when you opened a file, which does sometimes happen if you're in the right kind of units, like if you're in inches or millimeters. Sometimes they'll open on their own. What you want to double check is that over here on the left hand side it says Mill and not Turn. Oftentimes people are wondering why their tools don't show up or why their options look different. It's because they're on Turn. So just click that right there until it says Mill. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off the tools just so my screen isn't so cramped while I'm working. I'll turn it back on when I need it. Okay, so once we have the machining browser open, have our tool set to Mill, what I want to do first is set up what's called the stock. Actually, that's not exactly true. I'm going to go to post first. Let's see. So yeah, make sure you're on Mill. Okay, so set up the post processor. So over here where it says post and there's like a little gear icon, I'm going to click on that button post and it should take me into this post processor option. What we want is for it to say Shop Saber WinCNC UA up here at the top. And you may find that you have other options and that isn't one of the ones for the drop down here. If that's true, what you want to do is go here to where it says set up post processor and copy this file path into your computer browser. So I believe I also wrote that. Okay, so kapla-student.arizona.edu. I go to my computer file browser, and I'm just going to copy that into the URL line here. And actually, yeah. So what you actually want is to copy, right, backslash, then paste it. That was wrong. So actually it's okay. So backslash capla-student.catnet.arizona.edu /MATLAB/RhinoCAM. And basically this is the location on our file server where all the tools are handled and the post processor is handled for RhinoCAM. And that just ensures that we're all using the same settings for our machine and that we're all using the same tools or router bits for our machine. So if you don't find that, what you want to do is click on this little 3-dot button. You don't find Shop Saver Win CNC, I mean. Nice. It should open up a file browser. There we go. Oh yeah, okay, that's the problem. So what you want to do is navigate to it. Here in your file browser, copy that whole URL over into this line here, folder where post-processor files are located. I missed something there, post-processor. Okay. Yeah, copy that whole address line here. And then when you go up here, once it's loaded that location, you should have the option to hit Shop Saver Win CNC. Now, it should actually automatically load this. You won't even have to deal with that. The other thing that you're going to check for here is down at the bottom where it says posted file extension, meaning that's the type of file that we're going to make at the very end. That's the type of file we need to use on the router. We're going to hit the drop down and we're going to hit .tap or .tap. We want to make sure it's set to that. That's the type of file that our router will. Once we have Shop Saver Win CNC and once we have .tap, we can go ahead and click OK. So that means our post processor is all set up. Again, you can refer to this section in the guidebook if you can't really see it here to do that step. And then the other thing that we're going to look for is the tool library. That's in the same location. So in our machining browser up here on the left where it said mill, the button right next to that is going to be the button to load the tool library. And this tool library represents all the router bits that we have to use on a router. So it's important that when we're setting up milling operations, that we're using this library, this set of tools. If you don't see this set of tools here, we're going to go to the top where it says Load Tool Library, second from the left. And once again, we're going to navigate to that same location. So // capla-student.catnet.arizona.edu /MATLAB /RhinoCAM /tool library. We're going to select this one, RhinoCAM tools _1_16, but not the one that says new. Click open. Now I already have mine loaded. It'll ask if I want to replace them. Doesn't matter. And we should have about that many tools. Now once the tool library is loaded, then we want to go ahead and set the stock box. So I'm going to go ahead and close the tool library again so I can see better. So what the stock box is basically we're telling RhinoCAM that's the size and location of the material we're going to cut out. So RhinoCAM doesn't necessarily know what we put on the router. Tell it. So in order to tell it, we need to go under stock, click the little drop down, and hit the button box stock. So we choose box stock because that's basically the shape of what we're cutting out of. We can also choose a bunch of different other options, including like a custom, if we did a weird shape for maybe a topography or a site model. For now, once again, we're going to choose stock, just box. So here, under corner coordinates, you should see 0, 0, 0. That's the location. That's the origin of the file. So that's where our stock box is. And that'll matter later when we go ahead and zero the file. And I'll explain what that means in a minute. And then down below, we're going to enter the size of the box. And once again, that should be 7 by 7 by. That's the dimension you've been given assignment. That's the dimension of the foam we're going to cut out of. And you can also, and it should do this by default, but you can also hit copy model bounding box. And if you've modeled your box or your stock and there's nothing else in your file, it should automatically pick up. And then I'll click OK. Now you'll see a little orange kind of transparent box has appeared around your geometry. In the machining browser at the bottom, there's a bunch of kind of visibility toggles. Stock visibility is that very first one. So we can turn that on and off, and that's just showing us where that stock is relative to our geometry. And the next step would be to say, for example, our geometry was out here for some reason. When we made our stock, then we could align it to our geometry. So the next button down here would be align. Click the drop down. We can click align stock. And this also is something you want to do if the geometry you're cutting out of isn't like perfectly the same size as your stock, which often happens, right? Because often you want to leave a little bit of extra around the outside because you can never zero it perfectly. What we're doing here is we're aligning that box, that 7 by 7 by 2, to our geometry. And generally speaking, you want to align it to the top of the geometry. That way you're milling through as little material as you possibly can, and to the center. You're leaving as much around the outside. So Z alignment set to top, XY alignment set to center. I'll go ahead and click OK. Now you can see our geometry is way out here, not at 0, 0. So under align, I'll go back under align and hit set world CS. What that means is coordinate system, locate world coordinate system. And what we want is for the 0, 0 to be at the closest corner of it. And that's important because when we put the stock on the router, we're going to have to zero it. We're going to have to tell it where that corner is, so it knows where to cut. Because you can put an object anywhere in the router bed. It doesn't necessarily know where that object is unless you throw it. So here again, we're going to go set to stock box or set to part, doesn't matter, right? Because they're both aligned. So under zero face, that's our Z dimension. We're going to hit lowest Z. The reason for that is we're always going to want to zero the router to the bed. That way, we know that if we don't go below 0, don't go below the bed, we're not going to cut into the bed. It's an important thing when running the router. And then under 0 position, which is our XY, we're going to choose southwest. In other words, the corner that's closest to us. And once we have all those options selected, go ahead and click OK. And you can see everything's been moved back to 0, 0. Now I want to point out, so down in the machining job kind of panel here, if you double click on stock box, you may find that the corner coordinates are not 0, but there's some really, really long number times 10 to the whatever power, which can sometimes cause errors. So sometimes when you do that kind of operation, it'll get your object really, really close to 0, 0, but it won't actually put it at. So you can fix that, and that will cause errors later sometimes when you're generating a toolpath. I would just go in here into stock box, double check that your object is at 0, 0, 0. If it's not, just go ahead and set it to 0, 0, 0 and click OK. Shouldn't see anything change. Because again, it's really, really close to 0, it's just not quite there. And then go ahead and click OK. That'll potentially save you from having problems later. Okay, so we did all those steps. And then our next step will be to set up a toolpath. Again, I'm going to actually do a different video for each one of these tool, parallel, finish, horizontal, radial, and spiral. I'm going to go ahead and sign off now, and then you can, excuse me, you can choose whichever video you want, depending on which toolpath you play with. And I encourage you to try a few. I'm going to go ahead and sign off.